Hi, Freelancer. Welcome to today's episode of the Freelance Blueprint. I'm your host, Lisi, a freelance UX designer and digital nomad. Today, we're joined by Eva. She's a brand designer and brand strategist who started her freelance career almost straight out of university. She helps freelancers and business owners with their personal brand and also designed the personal brand of Kat, a previous podcast guest. Let's find out more about Eva's freelance journey. Hi, Eva. Where are you calling from?
Hey, so I'm calling from Porto, Portugal. It's very sunny today, which is totally driving my energy.
Nice. Is that where you were born or did you move there?
No, I usually say born, raised, and based.
But Porto is super nice. I love it. It's so nice.
I mean, it's a biased opinion, but yeah.
If I wouldn't know anything about you, but I would meet your best friend, how would they describe you to me?
Oh, I think they would say I'm pretty introvert at first. So I'm not the type of person that will come up to you. You would probably need to come up to me first. But once we get chatting and get into like maybe one of my favorite topics, etc., then I'm probably going to run off and tell you my whole life in the following 30 minutes.
Nice. So it's kind of like shy at first, but then no filter.
Yeah, zero filter, which can be a problem, but sometimes, it's majorly good.
Okay. Was it ever a problem? Did you ever say something that you feel like maybe you should have waited?
Maybe it's more of my like overthinker and perfectionist nature where I'm like, oh no, maybe they thought that was weird. But I'm all about embracing the weird side of your personality. So it is what it is.
I think that also comes across with the brandings you do, that you say like embrace who you are, don't try to be someone else, don't copy someone else. But also the other thing that you mentioned, and I think a lot of freelancers tend to do this, is this perfectionism. Do you have any tips for people who suffer with that to overcome it? Because otherwise we never get things done.
Oh yeah. I think first of all, it's kind of a mindset shift where we have to understand things will never be done. Especially with our own brand, our own website, our own marketing, all of those little things and tasks that come up when we are freelancers. There will never be a point when we can say, okay, check, I never have to do this again. It just doesn't exist. So striving for perfection in that sense, it's just almost to the point of ridiculousness because it will never happen. And the more that you kind of go into that mentality of, oh, that person did it that way and they had success in that way, so let me kind of copy it, the further away you're going to be from actually creating something you're proud of shouting out about. And then it just becomes like a vicious cycle where you're not talking about your business because you don't really align with it. So you try and see what other people are doing and you replicate that and it just starts all over again.
How is it for you when you, or maybe let me rephrase this. I feel like oftentimes we get similar types of clients. So for example, for me, for some reason, I get a lot of AI dashboardy things. I assume you might get the same. I think you get a lot of freelancers or people who have their own business or starting out, maybe a bit further along the journey. If you have to design a branding for similar types of people, how do you still make them distinct and like specific to the person or the brand?
Oh, I love this question. This is so fun. I totally love it because you're right, especially at the beginning. So I'm coming up on 5 years of business, which is insane to even think about. Thank you. And at the very beginning of my journey, I found myself getting not so much like tech AI, like you were saying, but a lot of coaches, not just like business coaches, but like life coaches, etc., coming through me because it was my first client, referrals, word of mouth, again, snowball effect. And once I kind of decided that I wanted to expand the types of clients that I got into, it was, first of all, it's tough when you kind of don't want to keep doing that and you want to get creative and work with other types of clients. That was like the first thought that came into my mind, is that sometimes it feels like you're stuck with a certain industry or with a certain type of client, and it can be hard to kind of figure out how to let that go. But I always find when working with people from similar industries, there are other things that we can pull into the branding that make it really distinct. So my favorite, and that's why it comes across in my own messaging, is always the brand personality, which sometimes maybe the same or really similar to the personality of the brand owner, but it's not always, 100% match. And what I tend to do, so there's a bunch of exercises and research, etc., that goes into brand building. But I always kind of distill it into like 5 brand attributes, adjectives, whatever we want to name it. And I always think of those 5 words as almost ingredients to a recipe. And in the very odd chance that someone has those exact same ingredients, it's the quantities of each ingredient that will determine the outcome, the recipe. So, in Portugal, we have, for example, lots of recipes that involve eggs, sugar, cinnamon, flour. Like those 4 core ingredients could come up like 1,000 different desserts, but they are different desserts. It just, if you tweak certain ingredients, if you dial up or reduce some and dial up others, then it's a different recipe. So the outcome will be different. And, I now worked with a designer, which was really fun. Being a designer working on another designer's branding was kind of like this meta experience. And it was really fun because, I'm a designer. I follow a lot of designers online. We both had loads of designers follow us. So how can we kind of still make sure that it's all different, that it's sending the right message? Especially because sometimes we attract designers when we don't want to. It also happens a lot. So how can we really put and bring the personality of the person to the forefront and really make that the star of the show? Because, there's a lot of things that people can copy. People can copy almost anything, almost like to the point of how we talk. It's people get in the habit and it's just really hard to break it. But your personality is really tough to copy and mimic because it comes from all the life experience that you've had, all the conversations, stories, all of that comes into play, and no one has lived the life that's 100% like yours.
There are so many things. I just took notes that I want to based on that. So one thing, I think it's quite an achievement when you say you got a designer who picks you as the brand designer, because designers are very picky. I mean, I don't know about you, but like it's very, you look at options.
Super picky. Super picky.
You look at all the mood boards, you create all of these things, you do all the research, and then from all the people that you could choose as a brand strategist to be picked by a designer. So congrats. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
The other question was that you mentioned with somehow you attracted all these coaches. So I don't know if that was a niche that kind of came to you, or if that was something that you planned to do. And you mentioned that you are kind of stuck in maybe an industry. What do you recommend to freelancers who, no matter if they chose a niche or if it came to them, if they want to change, especially from a branding perspective, it's like a rebrand almost. What would you recommend to people who feel stuck in an industry and want to do something different?
Oh, so many like juicy little nuggets in there. That niche totally came to me because my first international client, if you will, because my very first client was Portuguese, obviously. But my first international client came from a referral. So it was a designer who just really didn't have the time or mental capacity to work with that particular client, or to continue working, I should say, with that particular client. And so she thought of me, refer that client to me, and then that one client referred me to all of the people in her industry. And so suddenly I just got this influx of coaching.
Nice.
And it was really nice at first, but I mean, I don't know if this happens to you as well as a creative, but I got kind of bored. I almost feel bad about saying this, but it gets, because it's the same routine, and I never, ever, ever wanted to niche by industry as a designer, because it just felt too limiting for me. I like to be learning new things. I like to talk to different people who think about things in different ways. And so breaking out of that cycle, almost, if you will, was tough, but we got there in the end. First of all, is really not being shy about calling these people out and like actively saying, I want to work with photographers, copywriters, web developers. It was really cool also to kind of start talking to adjacent service providers. So I'm a brand designer. Who will my clients need apart from me? in this rebrand process. Most likely a copywriter to write their website, a website designer or a developer. So I do websites as well, but I only do them in Webflow. So in case they don't want to switch platforms, they will need another website developer or another website designer or a photographer or, something else entirely. So kind of reaching out to those people and saying, hey, when you're working with clients, do they ever say like, oh, I've been searching for a brand designer, and do you think you could like intro or do an intro email for us to meet and for us to talk and to see if it's a good fit? Like searching the types of people that you can see already have in their community, the types of clients that you want. It's kind of a nice reverse psychology tactic that I like to use. And also, again, mindset shifts. I think it comes a lot from realizing that you get to design the type of community or the type of client that you want to have, because clients, no matter how much we wish for it, they just don't fall from the sky and into your lap and say, hey, I love your work and I want to work with you. They've probably been somewhere, somehow in your realm, in your space, in your community for a while. Some take longer, some don't take that long to decide to work with you. But maybe they're hidden in your subscribers in your newsletter. Maybe they've been a lurker, not even a follower in your social media for years. I've had clients who I, was kind of getting really anxious. Like, you've been commenting and liking every single one of my posts. We've been DMing, having a conversation. Like, this would probably be the time in the pipeline, if you will, which I hate that phrase because people are people, not numbers.
Yeah.
Where you would, start inquiring about offers or submitting your form in my website. And then they said, oh no, I'm literally saving up for working with you. And that was the biggest compliment I could ever have. And so now I know that person, no matter how long it takes, will eventually submit their form, and I'll be happy as a child, happy as a kid on Christmas.
Nice.
Because, they're coming either way. So if you start with, okay, I'm not happy with the types of clients that I have right now, kind of inverted. What would make me happy? What types of clients do I want? And kind of start outlining things. I always find it's much easier to reach a conclusion when you ask questions in the negative. For example, with my own clients, if I ask someone, what makes you special? What makes you different? Like, it's so hard to answer that. But if you ask it the other way, like, what about your industry don't you like? Or what do other people in your industry typically do that you just say, I'm not going down that route? And that already gives us some clues and some leads into what things maybe we can bring to the forefront.
Yeah, actually, one of the previous episode guests, Kat, you know her, you've done her branding, and we talked about
that was the client I was talking about.
And she was saying how it was like therapy working on the branding, because you have to actually figure out what you want to communicate, and also you learn who you are. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your branding process and how you get the special sauce in for each of the clients?
So I feel like brand strategy has become such a fluff, meaningless word that actually kind of describing what goes into it helps a lot for people to realize what it is in practical terms. So once we book the project, whatever, and we go right into the deep stuff, there's this questionnaire, which isn't massive, but isn't short either, that has some, I like to call them brand thinking prompts, because it's just to get your brain working. Because most often than not, the last time that you actually thought about these things and had a talk with yourself about your own brand and your own business, it's probably been a while. Because we're all focused in our client output and our marketing output and doing things for others and thinking about others and not our own stuff, our own brand, our own goals. So it's just to get you in the right mind space and get you wondering about things. So it's very common for people to, answer question 1, 2, 3, then skip to 10, and then come back to 5, because thoughts just start percolating in your brain, and go take a shower and go take a walk. And you don't need to fill these out, in one go, because it's just not going to work. And from those prompts, I usually then get on a call, 2 hours. It's intense. We have snacks, we have drinks, where I just kind of start highlighting stuff that they wrote and explore it. Like, oh, why did you write this? What made you say this? What experiences have you lived that kind of brought this to light? Why do you feel like this is important? And again, questions about what do you want to avoid in your brand? It's very interesting to then ask, okay, but why do you want to avoid this? Like, has maybe a client called you out on something? Maybe it's a fear of being perceived a certain way that you don't want to be that way. So we just highlight stuff. And then I go into my little corner, kind of compile all this information together. And when you have information about brand owners' goals, perspectives, etc., you have information about their audience, who they're looking to attract. You know the services that they offer. You very quickly, again, from the outside, it's very easy to connect the dots. Like, okay, if you're this person and you're trying to attract this person through this thing, then I feel like we might want to communicate this, this, and this in this way. And certainly it feels like, confettis have been brought into the room because things start to make sense. And usually I can see like two different creative directions or mood boards, if you will, that we could apply to this brand that will pull different elements from the brand. Like, it's the same brand, but by highlighting different aspects of it, different perspectives, personality traits, then we can go to two different routes. And that's where I ask the client, not which one are you more comfortable with, but which one excites you most. Because typically there's one that causes like butterflies in your stomach. And it doesn't need to be like, I'm scared of that. It's like almost a better version of you that you are sometimes afraid to embrace. Like, oh, I don't know if I'm capable of filling those shoes. But that's just you in a different light. So yeah, just kind of asking about foundations, audience, positioning. Those are the terms that you'll typically hear. Where it's very straightforward stuff like, hey, who's your dream client? Like, describe to me the best client that you've ever had. What are your offers? Why should I book this offer instead of that offer? And just kind of asking people why a lot. And I usually say to clients, hey, I'm going to be a pain in this call because I'm just going to ask why a bajillion times until you give me what I want. Because in the end, you can really see how the dots got connected. And if you want to say this in that way, then here is the type of imagery that we can use. And here are the colors that kind of go with that vibe, not necessarily color psychology, but that match the personality that we're trying to create.
Nice. One of the things that you mentioned, and I can't read my own branding and my own writing. Oh yeah, the glitter effect when you said, oh, now there's the confetti and everything. And what is it like for you when you see people's reactions to, like, they see the brand and it's like, okay, this is me, or this is supposed to be me, or like you just said, this is more than me. Like I can't feel those shoes. How do you what is that like from the other end?
Oh my gosh. I've actually had clients cry on not the brand strategy call where we're like going through all of the info, but the following
Is it that long
call.
of a call?
Yeah. But on the following call where they've chosen the mood board, and then again, I go off into my corner to design their assets for like a couple of weeks. Always giving, people feedback and telling them how things are going. But then we come on and I either, again, have a meeting for people who really like, to do things in person, or I just record a video for those who don't. Very open to all types of personalities. And I've had people on calls where I finish the presentation and like sometimes I can't see their face because when you're sharing the screen, you can't see people's reactions. So I stop sharing my slides and then I see their face and they're just like crying happy tears. And I almost have no words because, in our brains, we're obviously trying to make the best decisions possible. And I've sketched out maybe a dozen or 100 ideas and little tweaks and little variations. And especially because I work with a one concept method, I only present what I feel is the strongest idea. There's always that little bit of nervousness, like, will this land? Will the client see what I'm trying to get at? And when it does land, and it lands so perfectly, it's just like, I can't contain my smile. It's really, really awesome. Almost as good as seeing your work like in real life. I've had that happen as well. And it's
Oh,
just, oh, it's
it's
another
just,
feeling.
I mean, I didn't really like what you were just saying about seeing your work in real life. I didn't really see like my UX stuff being used because it's mainly B2B, and yeah, like it's very unlikely that unless you design Google Maps that you have someone next to you who's using your app or website at the moment that you're there. But before I came to England, I did a bit of copywriting for in Austria for McDonald's, and it wasn't anything crazy, but I had like the burger packaging, like it had my copy on the side that nobody reads, and or like, when you have the coffee, the seasonal thing, it's like you go into McDonald's just to like see
Oh,
that
yeah.
little bit of headline, and it's just a feeling that you cannot describe when someone,
It's insane.
yeah, when you see the product, when you see your brand. One thing I wonder with the reaction when people almost cry, because I think a lot of freelancers, a lot of them are very confident. You need a certain confidence to trust yourself that you can do the things that you're planning to do. But I also think there's many freelancers that lack confidence. They're good at what they're doing, but they really struggle to sell themselves. And if they then get a brand with the vision of how someone else perceives them based on what they've delivered, maybe it's also this, someone actually sees me this way. Someone can actually read that out of the little comments I've found and picks out the nice, like the glitter, the confetti out of that personality. You also mentioned before that it's easier to connect the dots when you're looking from the outside, but I think you're working on your own branding now, right?
I am.
So
And
how is
it's,
that?
well, a wild journey. I can confidently say I'm my own worst client. Like, by a far mile, I'm my own worst client.
We all are.
Yeah, I feel like it's a common thing. And it was really funny because, again, after working with Kat and seeing how it's totally possible, even honestly really positive, to have someone else work on your own brand, I then decided to work on my own brand myself instead of hiring someone else. But I think the key factor in why I decided to do that was because that first stage, the strategy stage and defining the creative direction, I did hire someone else. So I'm just literally doing the design stuff. So it's like, okay, I have literally no boundaries because it's me for me. I can do whatever. There's no budget. Well, there is a timeline. But it's a timeline for me, so it always feels less strict. Which, again, bad and good. But it's being creatively, it's very stimulating because I'm not trying to kind of match what I feel is the best option for a brand to what I feel a client will like or dislike or have a strong reaction about. It's just for me. But because I'm on the inside of that jar, if you will, I had to have someone on the outside, at least, like you were saying, read the label for me, because I'm seeing the label in reverse, so I can't read anything. And to have this other person, again, see things in me that I couldn't really see without help, and kind of take those and turn them into what I think is going to be a really exciting theme. I've always wanted kind of like an overarching theme over my brand instead of it just being my personal name. But it was the easy decision 5 years ago. And now, when I started, I always thought, okay, if I make it to 5 years, I don't even need to be successful. It's just making it. I will have done more than a lot of people. I remember seeing this statistic, and I'm always so afraid that I get the actual number wrong, but it was something like only 45% of businesses make it to 5 years when they're freelancers, etc. And when I saw that, I was like, not scary at all. Cool. Love the pressure. I just need to make it.
I think it's even less than 45%. I heard it's like, I mean, if you look at startups, it's like less than 5. I don't know about freelance statistics, so maybe it's something different. But 5 years, being able to maintain yourself by your own work, not having people behind you with hiring managers or like a whole team, just yourself. And of course, I'm not saying you can't outsource certain things, but
it's just a reality.
yes, you wear so many different hats. But also the other thing that you mentioned that's interesting is the overarching theme. And I don't know, maybe it's not quite the same, but for example, this is the Freelance Blueprint podcast. I have the newsletter, which is the Freelance Blueprint, all these kind of things which are branded with that. And then I have me, and I use the same branding across, but it's also this weird balance of like, I don't know if I'm my own brand because I'm basically me. So I don't feel like I have to brand it. But then the Freelance Blueprint is like, okay, it's for people who are freelancing, but also it's not just beginners. It's also kind of more advanced, maybe not for like people that make 6 million a year or whatever, but it is for freelancers, So I was trying to be a bit more playful, to not have it perfect because it's all over the place, to have it a little bit fun. But then at the same time, when I started, like what you mentioned, I just picked some colors, and I'm proud of myself of saying I didn't choose my favorite colors. I chose what I thought fits the meaning of what I want to represent.
Very proud.
Thank you. But at the same time, I've never revisited it. A brand is not just a logo. It's just like this tiny little thing. And I think many people don't realize that, yes, you need a logo, but that the logo is there to remind the person who sees it of the brand. Like
it's
when
a
you
symbol.
Look, exactly. Yeah. So
it's a symbol more than anything.
Yeah, I guess the people that are listening to this podcast they have an idea of branding, but if you would summarize it very quickly so people know it's not just the logo, what do you think are the most important things that are included in a brand?
I think, first of all, a brand, and again, I'm quoting someone, which I would love to tell you who it is, but I can't off the top of my heart. A brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And no one's going to describe your logo when they're talking about you. Like, it's just not going to happen. The most of like tangible brand assets that people might mention in a casual conversation talking about your business or your brand, it's like, oh, the brand with the purple heart, or the brand with the yellow M on a red background. It's that simple. It's colors capture the most attention, like right off the bat. And if anyone is going to remember anything like visual about your brand when talking about it, is that. And people notice those visual assets first before they go in and read the copy and read your website and spend some time reading the captions and going to your marketing and Instagram profile. Like, the visuals capture attention first, but it's all the other stuff that keeps them there. So you kind of need both. But in terms of tangible stuff, when I deliver a branding project, there's a full logo suite. So not just one logo, but several variations of it, because you need room to play. You're going to have so many different graphics and things that you're going to create that you will want to brand. So you just need some room in order to do it in the best way possible. Then you have your color palette, where each color has its own job to do. So not all colors are alike. So sorry to say. And then there's your font suite as well. And again, each font has its own kind of styling so that people can read it properly. Legibility, readability above everything else, always. Because it's literally pointless for me to pick a really cool font that no one can read. It just does nothing. And then depending on the brand, in case it fits, maybe there is like an icon, maybe there's some branded gifts, maybe there's a pattern. I've worked recently on a physical product brand, which I don't do it that frequently, but I love it. So there was, a ton of collateral, tissue paper, tape, stickers, boxes, labels, like anything and everything that you can imagine. Thank you cards, email signatures, newsletter templates, social media templates. You can brand almost anything, really, but you need those core guidelines and core things in order for me to I feel like the mark of a strong brand is when you put all of these assets aside, just digital, just print and digital, and you can see they belong to the same brand world or ecosystem. Because when things start looking like two different brands is where your audience might not immediately get that reaction of, oh, this is Lizzie's brand. And that's where you're losing people, because there's this very well-known statistic we all know. People need, on average, to come into contact with your brand at least 7 times before even thinking about buying whatever. And if they come in contact with your brand and they don't realize it's yours, then it's pointless. You're not building that momentum. You're not capacitating them with that choice.
Yeah. How do you feel about, and you mentioned that before, how people copy also a lot of branding, or maybe they change a little bit, maybe even the copy itself, the tonality and stuff. How would you deal with it if you spend so much time on your branding now, all the brain work, and then even like this overarching theme, even if someone else does something similar, because like the whole copyright, all these kind of things, and especially now with AI, where nobody really knows what the sources are for the output, and people are just like, create a logo for me and use it. How do you deal with that?
It's a conversation that needs to happen more, I think. It also, I think, starts way before the design. It starts with understanding that creating a brand, creating a business, before the design, you need to have the legal foundations. And so even for me as a designer, there's 2 things that I will always outsource, and I will always have an accountant and a lawyer. And those can't be replaced. Point blank, they can't. And when it comes to copyright, like you were saying, when you own a personal brand, again, speaking from Portuguese law point of view, but when you own a personal brand, I mean, who's going to want to register or trademark your name when it's not their name? Like, it's weird, right? And you're not going to trademark your own name because it's your name, you know? But when you're, for example, when we have the freelance blueprint, if that's yours, you created that, you invented that, you have the domain for it, you have all of these assets, people associate that with you, it's your brand, literally, and you don't trademark it, then what's keeping me, now that I've been on this podcast, oh, I really like that name, let me just register it, make it mine, and then send you a really nice letter saying how you can't use it anymore. I've had people having to rebrand, come to me to rebrand because someone else took their name. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Because you're just starting the whole project on the completely wrong foot. You're starting a rebrand project. When you're in love with the rebrand, you're being forced to leave. It's like a relationship. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor and not worry just about buying the domain and getting the Instagram handle. Those are very important things. It's cool if they all match. Please register it.
I mean, the thing is, the freelance blueprint is such a generic name.
But it's yours.
I'm not sure, actually. I was like, I just start with something. I need a name for this thing. And I don't even remember if it was me, if my coach said so. I don't even remember where the name came from, but it's like, it's generic. Everything is something blueprint nowadays. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll change it once it's big enough, but I mean, I don't think it's like massive. I mean, it's not tiny anymore, but it's also not like, it's not like McDonald's or something. But at the same time, you're right. Anyone could at any time just go and snatch it. Yeah, so I should probably look into that.
I feel like it's the implications because, you have a podcast, a newsletter with this name. To now go and have to change it means you're going to have to tell a bunch of people, hey, this is no longer this name. So sorry for the inconvenience. And now every time you open an email, every time you have that notification of a new podcast episode, that immediate recognition might not be there anymore just because the name's different. And that's a naming problem. It's not even a branding problem, because that happens in branding as well, even when the name remains the same. There's rebrands that go awfully wrong. The one that comes to mind is the Tropicana one,
Uh,
where they changed not just the logo, but again, we have to think about how that brand is going to be viewed by the audience. Tropicana, orange juice, people are going to see it in the supermarket on the shelf. If I go into the supermarket and I just don't recognize the bottle, I'll just skip it and go to the next one on its side. Like it wasn't such a tiny change, but I encourage people to go see it. Flipping the logo on its side on a bottle and changing the cap, that was enough that people just didn't buy Tropicana. And Tropicana had to revert back to its old branding and, in essence, wasted millions of dollars for nothing.
hmm. I think people don't realize how subconsciously branding really affects us. They think it's like, oh, it's this, like, this certain logo. Like there are the typical, very common brand examples, like best case examples that always pop up are like Nike, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and they
Those
show
brands
how
have years.
exactly they've had years to build up the trust and to brainwash everyone with this trademark. And it's a very different thing when you just get started, especially when you say you have to be in contact with someone 7 times for them to be like, okay, I recognize this brand, I know this brand. Are there any tips you have for people who maybe want to start a personal brand or want to, just as a freelancer, be a bit more, have a bit more of an online presence?
Mm-hmm.
And then they will realize, oh, I need to put a picture somewhere. I need to have a color for this thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for them?
I think, first of all, in order to decide what you're going to do as a seller, understand how you act as a buyer. For example, there's this big insurge of faceless accounts, how to create and have a ton of views, likes, whatever metric we're picking, without showing your face, etc. I will not talk for anyone but myself, but I know that if I see a bunch of videos of no one, of hands, basically, I don't know who that person is. Why should I hand you my money? I have no inclination to trust you. Because again, what's keeping that from being stock footage of someone else entirely? AI footage or videos or photos or whatever. So first of all, I would say get over yourself and just put up a headshot, like a nice clear headshot in your profile picture. That goes a long way. You don't need to go all out and start doing talking head videos on Instagram if you don't want to. But you can start with, some selfies here and there just for people to get accustomed to your face. It took literally like 2 years for me to do talking stories. So, go easy on yourself. But then also, if you're building a personal brand and using your own name, so not just having like a studio or agency name or whatever, it's really easy to get too attached because the brand is you and you are the brand, and things get really blurred and mixed within this space. So if you feel at some point like, hey, I want to kind of separate this, you can still be a personal brand with a brand name that isn't your name. You can just like create like the freelance blueprint or like my new brand name. And I'm just dropping this here without saying anything else. But you can separate things so that it feels better for you to show up and that you don't feel so mixed up into how your work is viewed, because you start kind of correlating your work with your own value and things go really downhill from there. But you can still be a personal brand even so. It's not, colors, fonts, logos, having a brand system, if you will. It's not just for the big guys. It's for the small girlies as well. And it's one of my favorite books from like all time, business books, is Company of One by Paul Jarvis. Because especially when I was starting out, there was this idea that you only make it when you have an agency, you have a team of 20, and you're kind of stopping doing what you do in your zone of genius and you start managing people. And that was literally my worst nightmare. But at the same time, come on, we all want to be successful. We want to grow. We don't want to be stagnant and just stay the same. And that book really showed me that you can grow, you can be successful as a company of one. Even though I have an accountant and a lawyer, I still consider myself a company of one. I don't pay payroll to anyone. But sometimes, and that's the really cool thing, there's a project that comes along where I can hire other people on a project basis. So, for example, for that packaging project that I was talking before, because it was such a big deal, I thought after going through the strategy process, etc., this project really needs like some goal icons and a pattern, but more on the illustration side. And that's not really my forte. So I talked with a client and say, hey, I think this project would really we could really drive up its potential if we hired an expert, an illustrator, to create these things for us that will just amp up the personality even more, amp up the memorability. It's kind of, those fun little tweaks that clients will see and they get really excited. What'd you think about that? The client had the budget. I picked the illustrator. We kind of merged and worked together on the brand, and it worked wonderfully. So I like having this flexibility of bringing on people once a project requires it without being responsible for their livelihoods. And we each, that illustrator had other clients and other projects, just like I had other clients and other projects as well. We weren't dependent on each other. And I feel like at some level that drives the creativity even more instead of us feeling like really dragged by the whole thing.
Absolutely. I think the nice thing when you go on a freelance project, and also it's a sad thing, is that this project will eventually end, or the phase that you're working on it might end. And I always had this idea to one day have an agency, but it wouldn't be an agency with employees, because I don't want to have a discussion with people about, oh, I don't want to give you a pay raise, you're not worth that money. Or maybe you're worth that money, but I can't afford it. So I'm going to tell you, you still have to learn X, Y, Z to climb the ladder or something. And I'm against this whole corporate ladder thing. It's also what you said, managing people for you is a nightmare. So some people, when do you stop growing? We all want to grow, but when are you going to be content with where you are? And anyway, so that agency concept, so if anyone wants to do that, I'm happy for someone else.
It's just not for me.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even, I would love to just have different freelancers and it's all just for this project. And also if you think of, if a big company hires, I don't know, someone to do a rebrand, website, print, all of these kind of things, they will hire a recruiter to put a team together, and that recruiter will take a batch. So instead of, I'm not saying the recruiter shouldn't be part of it. They could be part of that agency model, but either way, there would be a team. And then maybe the money that maybe the recruiter would get or whatever, everyone takes a bit of a cut, but then there's a bucket of the stuff that you could use that you don't usually get as a freelancer. So if someone's suddenly ill and it's not their own fault, you would get sick leave. Or if you have children and you don't get childcare or something, or someone's sick, someone can't look after your children, will provide childcare out of that bucket, or whatever it is, that it would kind of combine the freelance and corporate world. But I think it's also quite tricky to maintain this, because you'll have to find projects, and it would also be it will end. But if you have a good network of all the right people, and if you have a good client, that would be amazing. But also it will be difficult to maintain a client relationship if you're not an agency and always have the same team. But you were talking about, it took you 2 years to talk in front of the camera. And now I remember, because I was thinking how I came across you. And I don't remember, I think it was Joanna Galvao or something. Maybe she tagged you or posted something about you, and they came across your profile, and then you did a online presence challenge or something along those lines, where every day you got a different prompt. Yeah. And I was super excited. I signed up, and then there was this, I think you had to do a talking story.
It was highly encouraged.
Yeah, something like that. And then I was like, oh my God. And I was just so nervous. And it's I don't know what it is. Even if you pre-record it, you can rewatch it before you post it. There's just something, especially at the beginning, to show your face to the camera. And my biggest fear was, what if one of my UX clients finds my Instagram where I'm targeting freelancers, you know?
Mm.
What if they're like, oh, but she's doing this, she's not really doing UX, she's actually doing something else. Like, this was my biggest fear, or that I come across as super cringy, you know, filming myself on the laptop. And that actually happened. One of my clients saw my content and I thought, oh my, she's also, no, she's not Portuguese, she's Brazilian. But anyway, and she was totally fine with it. You know what actually happened? She asked me if I can help her with her online presence as well. So it's so weird. All the fears
I
we
keep
have.
telling people.
Yeah, all the fears we have about showing our face. So can you tell people who are in that situation where you were where it took you 2 years to overcome it?
Yeah.
Can you give any tips to people who are in that situation right now?
Yeah. Because you were saying at the beginning how creatives, there's kind of like two groups, some who seem like they have a lot of confidence and some who seem like they don't have any confidence at all. So why do the people who don't have any confidence even start businesses? It feels kind of contradictory. I think it's because especially for creative business owners and freelancers, it's about having this space where it's allowed for you to create with no boundaries. And you have a place where you can it acts almost as like a filing cabinet, and you can go in and see your progress, almost like in a sketchbook, but digitally. And they start that way, and suddenly it's like, oh, I could make money out of this. Now I feels like I have to show up on video, and it's really uncomfortable, and suddenly I feel very stiff, and my voice sounds wrong, and my face is wrong, and I need to wear something else and go and fix my hair and all of that crap. It took me 2 years, but it also took me like 4 years to even realize that I had a business. Because if you would have asked me in college, like, will you ever be a freelancer? I would have told you point blank, you were nuts. But I did not have the mental capacity for it. I'm much more happy to do what anyone else says and be a good girl and shut up about it and just do what I'm told and get a paycheck at the end of the month. However, I had a really nice, not so nice experience where that happened, and I was being told what to do, and I could tell to that person, like, that's really not the best avenue. And they were like, we don't care. And I lasted 2 months, and then I quit. It was
Good
a
on
really
you.
nice internship. I quit on Christmas Eve as a gift from me to me and left them burning, and it was wonderful. And suddenly I kind of got into my college past self, and I was like, well, I guess this is my only option, because I did not have a 4-year degree to be wasted like this experience that I just had. So I'm going to go on and create my own stuff. And did I have the confidence to do it? No, I really did not know what I was doing. I just did it anyway and learned on the go. And as time went on, more hats had to be worn by me. Suddenly there were a lot of hats, and I was very confused on which hat was right for which occasion. And it's a mess, and it feels like you're balancing, or it feels like you're juggling while walking on a rope, and it's way too much. And you just kind of think to yourself, if I fall, it will all be over. And when it comes to confidence, I feel like it depends on how the whole journey started. Because if you started like this and you're not really sure how you even got to where you are, sometimes it's just another thing that you add on. And it's like, well, it looks like I'm recording videos. Let's see if this works. And this like experimentation and playful attitude is really positive. Or you get the other reaction, which is, not for me. I don't like this. Too uncomfortable. I'm just going to head out. And there's this whole bucket that stays untapped. You didn't even open that door. Think about what it would feel if your clients did that with you. You want them to open that door, right? You want them to trust you. So you have to show them why they should trust you. How do you get trust with people? You talk to them, right? So talk to them. Face your phone like you would face your friend. And I know everyone says this advice, but it really is just like FaceTime. And I started with stories because they expire after 24 hours. And, I started with, I don't want to record stories, to now being like, cool, less than 100 people watched my stories. What's the point? So honestly, the brain shifts in a really weird way, because you go from, I don't want anyone to see this, to so little people saw this, it's not even worth it. But in those times, I also think, well, if 80 people walked through my virtual door and into my email right now, I would be, can I curse?
Yeah.
I would be fucked because I don't have the systems for it. To be honest, like if they all came looking for a branding project, those take on average 5 weeks. Like, do the math.
Yeah.
It would be a disaster.
That's the other thing, that people look so much into numbers. And it's also something that I had to learn, that it's not about the money, how many followers you have. It's not about how many likes you have. I have like, it is, and it feels like such a big achievement. Oh, you have over 1,000 followers, or you have your first reel where more than 100 people saw it. But then if you think of
Big
it,
thing.
yeah, there's like someone who has like there's a post where 15 people liked it, and none of them are bots. And if I would imagine this room with 15 real people, it is not nothing. It's not nobody. If you have 90 people see your story, if you visually imagine the amount of
90
people, that's I mean, it's not, if you look at story views, it might not sound a lot because you just see the number, but if you visualize 90 people, it's like a mini concert. It's like
I get nervous going to networking events with 20 people, let alone 90 people. It's absolutely mind-blowing how, because the number is digital, we forget what that number actually means.
Yeah. And it's also this feeling like, oh, by this time I should have grown much more. Why didn't I have a viral reel? Why didn't I have this? And I'm almost at 100 followers on Spotify alone. And that's like, but that's a podcast, I'm not asking someone to watch a 7-second reel. It's like an hour-long podcast. And that's 100 people. And once I had this mindset shift, I started to think, like everyone goes through this phase, like, is it even worth it? Why am I doing all this online presence? And then you get one person commenting, or you you said, you get the people that follow you for a while or comment on things or like things. And there are also people who don't interact with your stuff at all, but they look at everything.
There's people who don't even follow you, but I have people who I don't follow, but every time I'm like scrolling reels or scrolling my feed, their stuff pops in, and I know who they are. I've seen their stuff before, and I don't follow them.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, the fear of being cringy, whatnot. In my intake form, I have this question that I recommend everyone has, which is, how did you even learn about me? And when a client kind of types Instagram, then on the call, I kind of ask them like, oh, what was a tag? Was it a post? What was it? They hired me. I kid you not. They hired me for a 5-figure project because of a reel where I'm talking about, I don't know even what, while buttering toast and eating toast for like breakfast or whatever. I literally was like, oh, because I had a meeting with a client and I was thinking about the topic in my head, and I was like, let me just record this. It might be useful. And I like leaned my phone against the fruit bowl very awkwardly. And while I was just like breading my toast after said meeting, talking about it, I was just talking about it. Then I put captions, uploaded, didn't even think about it. And I think that's the mindset that you have to adopt. It's just do it. If no one sees it and you're afraid because, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so cringy, good. No one saw it. Perfect. If someone sees it and connects with it, how much better is that? Like, do you really want to waste that opportunity of someone seeing you and hearing you and thinking, that lands. I like this person. Let me find out more. Like, what a waste, And we're all just in this online space trying to grab the most opportunities that we want. And at the same time, it's the really simple stuff that sometimes does a trick.
If you think about it, you got $5,000 out of
Toast.
buttering toast. And It's just deciding to film it and put it online. And there are many freelancers out there who don't have an online presence or social media. For a very long time, like I've been freelancing for 5 years, and only in the last 1 or 2 years, I started to build an online presence. I just had my website and my LinkedIn, and that was it. I would say I still get the same amount of UX gigs, but I'm also not creating social media for UX. I'm creating social media for freelancers, because for me, it was this
You have two types of
life-changing.
audiences. It's different.
Yeah, that's very difficult as well. I still, like, if you have any recommendations on that, like, bring it on. But what do you recommend people who are on the fence of, is it really worth it having an online presence, or is it enough to just have my LinkedIn and potentially a website?
I would say, especially for people who came from a corporate background, no matter how short it was, maybe it was shorter than mine. Mine was 2 months. You will not meet a business that doesn't have a marketing department. It just doesn't exist. A business, in order to be successful and not just a very expensive hobby, needs sales. Point blank. There's no way around this. If we don't make money from our business, we can't pay rent, we can't pay bills, we can't pay a lot of things that we need the money for. It's a very sad reality. We need the money. Sometimes it is what it is. And in order to make sales, you need clients. In order to get clients, you need them to know about you. For them to know about you, you need to tell them about what you do. That's called marketing. You need to do it. Otherwise, like, how are people going to find out about you? Type on Google? Not going to happen. Referrals are a very good way to get started. But even so, if you don't have any social media presence, I've looked for like copywriters, or asked people for copywriters, or most recently like Pinterest managers. And the amount of people who are like, oh, I know this person, she's really good. And I search for them in Google and nothing comes up. Well, then I just forgot their name and I move on to the next. You need something that people can, a platform, a window shop, or a shop window of sorts, that people can look at and see if they like what's in there. It's like when you go, window shopping. There's a bunch of shops. Some you just kind of look at their window and go like, not for me. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not for you. And some you're in love. You go in, you buy the first thing you see, and then you come back for more. But you need to have that shop set up. Otherwise, guess the amount of clients that you just lost.
Yeah. And I guess often it's people just don't know what to put into the shop window. Or especially like what you just mentioned, I have two audiences.
Yeah.
What a potential freelance UX client wants to see compared to other freelancers want to see. There might be some overlap, but it's not quite the same. So if people don't understand, are you talking to me or are you talking to someone else? That's also a big difficulty. So do you have any recommendations for people who are still working on the messaging, or maybe also have different audiences for whatever reason, how they can prepare their shopfront?
Yeah. I feel like when people have different audiences, it sometimes correlates to the different offers. So you have like two offers in mind, and one person who buys offer one won't buy offer two, and vice versa. And that's where kind of the stickiness comes from. Because, there's all this talk that the offers need to lead into each other and be a funnel and whatnot, and client retention, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, any one of those offers, most likely someone else has. Maybe they don't have the two of them, but there's someone else in your industry that does offer one, and someone other entirely that has offer two. And what you need to realize, and it's a very odd thing to think about, people, when they buy your offers, they're not necessarily buying the offer itself, they're buying into you, because of how you work and what you believe in and how you talk about that subject. So my first tip is find, again, the overarching theme. What are the core beliefs, the processes, even the perspectives that are underlying in both things, and make that your shop window? It's not necessarily what you sell. Simon Sinek is why you sell it.
Yeah.
There is a reason why you have those two offers. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them. There's a reason why you want to appeal to those two different people. And it's the common theme between both of them. So instead of sticking to what's different about them, figure out what's similar and talk about the similarities. Because if I get hooked on you and your personality and your perspectives, then no matter what you sell, I'm going to buy it if it's right for me. If you say, I have this offer and it's for freelancers, and it's backed up by every single other piece of messaging and content that I've done, if I'm a freelancer and I can see how that offer will benefit me because you did a great job at explaining what that delivers, who that is for, who that is not for, all that jazz, and I got the ability and discernment as a consumer to decide for myself, I'll buy it. You could have the exact same content and say, I have this other offer, but that's for this other type of person. But again, still backed up by the same messaging, the same beliefs. There is a common theme most often. If there isn't, there's a lot of entrepreneurs with two different businesses. You wouldn't be the first one.
I know. And also, if you think about it, what you mentioned before with the personal brands, if you look at big personal brands, I don't know, Gary Vee.
Yeah.
Are there any colors that come to mind, or any, like, everyone knows him, but it's like, does he have a certain, he has like this jingle or something, I think, I'm not even sure anymore.
I mean, I'm not even a big consumer of Gary Vee, and even so, I'm seeing his face on my brain. So
Yeah.
that just proves the point of a personal brand. I have no idea what his website looks like, or his YouTube, or his Instagram, but I have kind of an idea of his core topics and themes, what his face is, and that's all I need to know. If I ever want more, I know how to search for him. Can your clients say the same?
Definitely more than just a logo. So there are 3 questions I always ask every guest of the podcast. And one of them is, would you ever go back to a permanent job?
Never in my life. The reason I left is the reason I'm not going back.
And if you could go back in time, let's say that Christmas where you quit your job, what would you tell that little girl? Well, I don't know how little you were, but what would you tell her?
Well, it was 5 years ago, so I was 21, I think. I had to look at the months. Trying not to get emotional, because that was awful. An awful time in my life. But I would tell her that if it's uncomfortable, go do it. Because if you stay in the comfort zone, you're not going to grow. You're just going to stay the same. If you want different results, you need to do different things. And it's hard. It stings. It's tough. It's, you feel like throwing up half the time. Doesn't matter. Just go for it. In 5 years' time, it won't really matter. You won't remember half of it. And you will fall sometimes. You will get up at least one more. So it's all worth it.
Nice. And if you think of your future self 5 years from now, so you would be then 31?
30 something. I don't want to think about it.
Don't say like it's a bad thing, I'm 34 and I'm actually thinking like it's
like in my brain, it's so much further away than 5 years.
Honestly, I remember when I was in my 20s and someone told me, once you hit 30, life gets so much better because you give less of a shit. You have better idea of who you are, what you want, what you don't want, and you are stronger with setting your boundaries. And I 100% agree. Like my life now is so much better than, so I would look forward to it. And I also heard it gets better over time. So I can't wait to be 40. I hope that, you never know, you can get hit by a bus. So I don't want to take it for granted, but like, I cannot wait actually to get older because I think it's just going to get better.
That's such a nice thought.
Yeah. Don't be scared of 30. Let me tell you, it's really, really nice. Cool. Last question then. 5 years from now, you're 31. Just imagine, just pull yourself in the situation. What type of clients are you going to be working with? What type of clothes are you going to wear? Where are you going to live? What you're going to do? If your future self would come to you today, what do you think she would tell you?
I think it will be something along the lines of, the future might not be 100% of what you expect, but somehow will be even better because you worked your way through it and you found, maybe the hard way, maybe not so hard, what you actually want it to be. Because we don't take enough, again, we're stuck into the day-to-day tasks and nagging and all this meaningless shit. And when we actually reach a point of like, none of this matters, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want, sometimes that looks really different from what we thought we wanted. Maybe it's what you need versus what you want.
And you also never know. Maybe at some point you realized you're super happy, and we don't always have to grow. We can also enjoy where we are. So, yeah.
Growth is acknowledging that you're okay. More is not always more, and I'm a maximalist, so.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If any of the listeners want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I am at Eva Couto Design, everywhere, anywhere. I'm going to spell it out because, Portuguese names. So EVACOUTO Design, and anywhere.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, speak to you soon. I don't know about you, but this felt like a 20-minute conversation to me when I was chatting with Eva. And I really, really hope you got a lot out of this conversation. I definitely got something out of it, and I'm going to trademark the freelance blueprint before anyone else does. I'm adding all the links about Eva in the description of this podcast. If you like this episode, please leave a review and hit the follow button. As mentioned in the conversation, it's only 2 people away from reaching 100 followers on Spotify alone. So if you decide to follow this podcast after this episode, send me a screenshot. I'd love to see it. This helps the Freelance Blueprint get suggested to more freelancers who can learn from more insights. That's all from me, and I can't wait to have you join again next week. Bye!